Luis Vargas was a successful Cuban businessman whose life seemed to be complete. He owned coffee plantations and achieved great success in his businesses. However, there was something important in his life that he lacked in love and family. Wanting to find a life partner who could be his faithful wife, he decided not to rely on chance and sent a letter to America to a woman with whom he corresponded under the name Julia Russell. He wanted to avoid a marriage of convenience, and chose a mail-order bride, confident that the feelings that arose at a distance would be real and sincere. When Julia arrived in Cuba, Luis was stunned by her beauty. In her letters she described herself as a simple and modest woman, but before him appeared an attractive and sophisticated person. Julia explained the discrepancy by saying that she did not want her appearance to influence his decision to marry her. Luis not only accepted this explanation, but was pleased that his choice was even better than he could have imagined. They were quickly married, and Luis was dazzled by his new wife and began a new chapter of his life, but from the very beginning, Luis and Julia's relationship felt strangely hidden. Julia tried to seem like the perfect wife, but her actions and behaviors often aroused suspicion. Despite her tenderness and care, there was a growing feeling in Luis that she was hiding something. This feeling was reinforced by minor inconsistencies in her accounts of the past and the way she reacted to certain questions. Nevertheless, Luis's love for Julia was stronger than his suspicions, and he continued to believe in her. Shortly after the wedding, Luis began to notice oddities in Julia's behavior. She asked him to open a bank account in her name to handle her money and asked him to wire her large sums of money. Although this caused Luis some doubts, he agreed, trusting his wife. But soon after, her behavior became even more mysterious. Julia began to disappear frequently, spending a lot of time alone, and Luis began to suspect that she was hiding something. His anxiety grew, but he didn't want to believe that the woman he loved so much could betray him. Things begin to change when Detective Walter Downs intervenes in Luis and Julia's lives. He arrives in Cuba and informs Luis that Julia may not really be who she says she is. The detective shows Luis pictures and documents indicating that Julia may actually be a criminal who has already defrauded several men. Luis doesn't believe it at first, but gradually his confidence begins to crumble. He begins to suspect that Julia is using him for money and that all her love is just a mask. Despite these suspicions, Luis cannot resist his feelings for Julia. He continues to live with her, but his relationship with her begins to change. He becomes more and more immersed in his thoughts and doubts, but every time he tries to talk to Julia about it, she evades or turns things around in a way that makes Luis himself feel guilty. Their passion gradually turns into something darker and more dangerous. Luis begins to suspect that Julia is leading a double life, and his love for her begins to turn into an obsession. He wants to know the truth, but is afraid of what he might find out. There comes a moment when Luis discovers that his bank account has been emptied and Julia has disappeared. At that moment, his world comes crashing down. He realizes that all this time he has been deceived by the woman he loved most in the world. In anger and despair, he decides to find her and get his own back, even if it costs him his life. Luis sets out to find Julia, following her through several countries. He finds her in a hotel where she is trying to elope with another man, whom she has also deceived. A tense conversation takes place between them, during which Julia confesses that she has been deceiving him for money all along, but then admits that she has really fallen in love with him. Meanwhile, Walter Downs, who turns out to be Julia's former lover, also begins to pursue them. He wants Julia back, believing that she belongs only to him. This triangle turns into a deadly game, where everyone pursues their own goals. Luis finds himself drawn into a complex and intricate network of lies, passion, and betrayal. He no longer knows who he can trust and is forced to make a choice that could cost him his life. The finale of the movie becomes the culmination of all these events. Luis, Julia, and Walter come face to face in a dramatic confrontation. Julia confesses that her feelings for Luis were real, but her past and desires have destroyed their love. Luis, despite everything that has happened, still loves Julia and is ready to forgive her, but realizes that their life together is impossible. During the final battle, Walter is killed and Julia is seriously wounded. The movie ends on a tragic note. Luis returns to Cuba, devastated and broken. He has lost everything: his love, his money, and most importantly his faith in people. Julia, dying in Luis' arms, in her last moments asks for his forgiveness. Luis forgives her, but this forgiveness cannot give him back what he has lost. He realizes that his life will never be the same and he can only live with the memories of how one woman changed his world forever.